Hey guys, Ed with the Craftsman here. This is part 2 of how to build a grinding fixture for knife making. So, here's my old fixtures. Um, this is one of our chopper blades. It's really simple. It's just a stop pin, or locating pin there, and a 3/16 hole for a 3/16 pivot. Now, everything I do with Red Horse is 3/16 pivot. So that's why all my fixtures have 3/16 pivots. Now if you notice, this fixture is fixed. It cannot move. My grinder, which is a TW90, has a pivoting tool rest. So I usually just move my tool rest to whatever angle I'm grinding the blade at. It's worked well for me so far. It's really not that time consuming. But I wanted to try something different. I wanted to see if the pivoting fixture is quicker. So I could leave my tool rest at a 90-degree angle every single time. So I don't ever need to touch my grinder. I could leave everything where it is and always be 90 degrees and only have to change the angle of my grinding fixture. With this grinding fixture, there's going to be a pivot system right here. And up here, locating pins with 2 dog bone type linkages that the length controls the degree of which it sits. So I'll have everywhere from 10 degrees to down to 4 degrees. That's typically where I grind at, somewhere between 4 and 10 degrees, depending on the blade. I'll give you the formula. It's just simple trigonometry on how to figure out the length. That's going to be much later on in the video once everything is done. So that's the big difference. I'm going to see if it saves time. I think it should. It'll be nice to hold my grinder at 90 degrees all the time rather than have to change it out. It's not a huge deal right now. The TW90 makes it really easy to switch it over. So I'm not too concerned with it right now, that part of it. The big part, though, is the materials. This is a big, heavy grinding fixture, and the base, because it's steel and my tool rest is steel as well, tends to bind when I'm grinding. I've gotten really used to it and can usually prevent it from happening, but I have some new employees coming in the shop, and they're not quite as adept. You could really ruin a grind pretty quickly by doing that. So all my holes are indicated and indented. I just used this punch to pre-locate my holes. This is the first drill bit I'm going to use. I use this to pilot the hole first. If you're drilling really small holes, it's a good idea to use this if you need to locate them exactly where they need to be. If I needed to drill small holes and didn't use this and say used a number 53 or something like that, that drill bit could walk on you when you're trying to get into this pilot hole. These are really good at finding the exact center of that pilot and centering your piece and drilling through. So you'll find yourself using these all the time to start your drill. So all I'm going to do is literally drill probably less than 20 thou into the surface of this and then go on to the rest. It's going to be a quick process. So just 20 thou deep, maybe. I mean, you can go more if you want, but it's really not necessary. Just so I have a deeper hole to locate my number 14 drill bit. Now, you might be asking yourself, why am I using a number 14 drill bit, which is 184 thousandths, as opposed to a 3/16 drill bit, which is 0.1875? That's because drill bits don't actually drill in perfect circles. Now, in theory, there is no such thing as perfect circle, but these actually leave a jagged type edge around the circle. So whatever hole you're trying to drill, you're not drilling a precision hole. You're drilling something that resembles a hole, but really more looks like it has teeth around the edge. It's going to wobble. So we drill a few thousandths undersized with the number 14, and then the final drilling we do is with a 3/16 or 0.1875 reamer. It was a carbide reamer I bought off of Shar's. you should always be doing this as good practice. Even on a fixture like this where we could probably get away with a point or a 3/16 drill bit, it's good practice to ream. You're going to get better fitments, less binding, and you're going to have more accurate work this way. These reamers are cheap. This one I think is $9 from Shars, www.shars.com. It's good tooling. Most of their carbide is made here in the USA. These last a long time if you're working with soft materials. If you're working with annealed steel, they'll work for a very long time. So reamers are the best way to go. If you're building folding knives, it's the only way to go. You will never have accurate folding knives unless you use a reamer. It's just not going to happen. Your tolerances are always going to be off. When you're setting pins on fixed blades, you should be using a reamer. Trust me, you'll see a big difference once you start undersizing and cutting to precision. So this is good practice to be doing that. Now, I'm using my Bridgeport mill to drill these holes. Everything's already set up. My drill press, which is right there, is primarily used as a countersinking machine. I almost never drill with it. I countersink with it or deburr with it, which I'll show you later on. But again, I rarely ever actually drill with it. The Bridgeport is super square all the time. Now, if you don't have a square ass Bridgeport, you can square, if you're using a drilling vise, which I highly recommend you do, you should never be drilling directly into the table. It's a good way to fuck up the table. You don't have any room for adjustment to square up your drill bit unless you're using a drill vise. So in your drill vise, set up your 1-2-3 block, and this here is just a 1/4-inch end mill that got dull on me. So I ground off the tip. End mills are very straight. You could pretty much call them precision. So they're great for lining things up like this operation. You're going to need 2 1-2-3 blocks. And again, as I said in the previous video, you can never have enough of these precision 1-2-3 blocks. You're going to need at least 2. Like I said, if you get 4 or 6, all the better. So what you want to do is square that up right over there. Now obviously the Bridgeport is already square. You can't see any light passing through. If it's off, you could just start to see the outline of my finger in there. Most likely from the drill presses that I've worked with, it's going to be canted this way. So the bottom will contact and it'll look something like that. See, I could see the light at the top of the end mill. Most likely you're going to have that. So you're going to have to adjust the 1-2-3 block in the vise until everything comes squared up. Now, if y'all really want me to, just leave some comments in the section and I'll actually make another video on how to square up your drill press. I think there's like 6 or 7 videos already using a method similar to this on YouTube. So if you really need to, just look up those videos. If those videos aren't helpful for you, just let me know and I can make a video on that. But for now, I'm not going to do that. Okay, so once you squared up your drill press, we're going to put in the countersink drill. Now I'm only going to drill one hole just to show you how it's done. It's pretty much done every single procedure, but so the video isn't half-hour long, I'm just going to do one hole and then show you how to drill the sides of the holes using a 1-2-3 block and a clamp. It's going to be pretty simple. Okay? Sorry, I had to grab my safety glasses. I'm going to try to position the camera a little bit closer. Now, when you're coming down on the bit, the workpiece, I'm going to have almost no pressure with my hands. I'm going to let it slide. Because if you watch, I'm going to turn the machine on. The hole kind of centers itself. See that? See how it just grabbed in? They pretty much automatically center themselves. Again, I wasn't using much pressure. I wasn't grabbing hard with it. I was just guiding it in, and it automatically centered itself. Learning that fine touch is pretty much one of the keys to knife making. Learning things, kind of knowing how much pressure to put on something and how little pressure to put on something is really the difference between a professional and an amateur. So you have to develop that skill of light touch. I'm a heavy-handed fucker myself. So it took me a long time to gain this skill of learning the soft touch. Some guys have it naturally, and it turns out they're usually better knife makers than the guys who are really heavy-handed. It's one of the reasons why I've experienced a lot of mechanics being really bad knife makers, because they're super heavy-handed. They're always wrenching on nuts and bolts and stuff like that to like a high degree, and that's not really the way to go with knife making. It's a finesse type thing. So if I was forcing this down with all the pressure I have, I'm preventing the bit to find the center. So when you go nice and loose-handed and just kind of let it fall in place, as soon as you see it grab and center itself, then you could kind of press down and engage the drill bit. So once I have that, I'm going to switch to my number 14 drill bit in cobalt. And just got to make sure it goes through a through hole. See if we get that a little closer. Same thing. I'm almost not going to even hold it and let everything self-center. Now I tend to peck drill everything. It keeps the chips from blocking the drill bit, clears it out. Usually go about 2-3 seconds of drilling and then up. Now, what I just did right there, you want to avoid. As I was coming up, because aluminum is grabby, it's very soft, it grabbed onto the drill bit as I was coming up and kind of lifted it. Now, luckily, because we're reaming it to size and the drill bit is undersized, you have a little room for slop. But if I were reaming this, you want to avoid that. I was kind of distracted by filming this video, so I kind of let it grab up on me, but normally you want to keep a good amount of down pressure as you're pulling up to prevent that grabbing. I'm going to clear my chips. Always be careful of chips on your workpiece. So a small chip can actually offset where your piece sits, and we want to keep everything flat as possible. So always make sure that your work table is clean. Now we're going to go with 3/16 reamer. And we're going to ream it to final size. So, there's our first hole. Now you notice on here, if you look in the light, there's a bit of a burr there. We don't want that. We don't want that ever, because as we go to do the second, the third, the fourth, the 8th billion hole, that burr is going to throw off our tolerances again. This is especially important in knife making when you're making folders. You want to keep everything square, and this burr right over here is going to prevent you from keeping everything square. There's a couple ways to get rid of that. You can use a sanding stone, like a honing stone, You could use a deburring tool like this to get rid of that real lightly. I'm not terribly happy with that hole. So I'm going to take it over to the drill press and countersink it. So I'm going to travel over here. Now again, normally with the drill press, this is pretty much all I use it for. Did that real quick. I'm barely engaging it. Now we have a nice clean hole. Now the countersinking is a nice little detail. It'll help you guide stuff straight in. It'll prevent the burrs from offsetting your workpiece when you're machining it. It's a good way to go. Now, to do these side holes for the pivot and the wishbone locating pins, all I'm going to do is clamp a 1, 2, 3 block straight to it. I'm going to clamp this down and then guide it in the same way I did the holes on the side. So all you got to do is get creative with stuff like that, and you could get good precision without a mill. Just get creative. Again, use these 1, 2, 3 blocks as much as possible. With this, I could actually get everything pretty square and straight. And again, just use my bit here to locate everything. And in the next video, I'll show you how I do this without... I have a DRO on my quill, so I could drill to the perfect depth that I want. I'm going to show you how to use a depth drill stop on these, so you know exactly how far deep you want to go without guesstimating. I've learned over the years to guesstimate as little as possible. 9 times out of 10 when I guesstimate something, I end up gravely regretting it. A lot of F-bombs, a lot of kicking random shit because I knew I was trying to be lazy, and you usually suffer for that. So be diligent. Don't guesstimate as often as you can. I guess see you at the next video. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Later.